Welcome to the MVP show. We're off to the USA today to chat with our Floridian friend, the only MVP from the Land O'Lakes, Mr. Scott LeFonte. Scott has recently joined the MVP community and is a senior solution architect at Hitachi Solutions, as well as co-host of the At Your Service podcast on the Serum Audio Network. Full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/51. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, here on the MVP show with Scott LeFonte. How are you, Scott?
Good. How are you, Mark?
Very good, very good. Tell me, Scott, where did you get a flash name like LeFante from?
Oh, if I could only tell you the stories from growing up. It's interesting though. I mean, growing up and even now, it's an Italian name. But everyone thinks it's French, and so I've been trying to, for years, trace back our ancestry somehow that would have went through Italy to France over to the U.S., and I just keep hitting roadblocks, so I'm getting frustrated. Maybe I need Microsoft AI to help me.
What tools have you used?
I've used Ancestry.com is one of the big ones, and that one's been pretty decent. I've been finding really good family tree information, but it just seems when I get down to like somewhere in the early 1900s with like my great grandparents and stuff, it just nothing. It's just like come to a dead end. Like they just, like they're like some gangster and they just kind of got rid of all their information. So
hey, that's probably exactly what it was. That's probably exactly what it was. Yeah, as in, I've done a bit of family history stuff with a name like Smith. You can imagine it's not that easy.
Oh no!
But I've gone back a wee ways and found out that we were smugglers at one point, and our name used to be McGregor, and they had to change their name to blend in somewhere. So Smith was chosen.
Yeah, I wanted a cool name. There's a guy works at Hitachi. His last name is Fightmaster. And I said, how cool would that be? Your name's Fight Master. I think he's like I was like, you should be like a Kung Fu Master or something.
How is that a serious name?
I don't know.
Wow.
And it's real. It's legit. Huh. I question it every day.
In New Zealand, we have restrictions on what you can call somebody. So, for example, you can't give them the name King or Prince or anything like that. Are there those type of rules over in the US?
You know who our president is, right? No, no rules. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I've heard of some outlandish stories in the news where parents wanted to name their kids certain words that were not very pleasant, and the hospitals wouldn't allow it, and then went to court, and the court wouldn't allow it. So I guess there is some restriction, but I don't think anything necessarily on the books. It's more like, hey, just don't be stupid and try to, in a drunk stupor, name your kid something just absurd. But other than that, no, you can call your kid whatever you want.
So where are you based, mate?
I am based in lovely Tampa, Florida. Been here for about the last seven years. So before that, I was in, for those listening in the States, I was in New Jersey, which is the armpit of America.
Why do they call it the armpit?
I don't know. It's actually the garden. Well, there's northern New Jersey smells. It's more industrial and things like that in certain areas, like in like central New Jersey. But I mean, there's a lot of New Jersey that's very lush and green and farmland. So I think it's because of the area that's closer to New York, it gets a bad rap. But I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I'm definitely glad I got out and enjoying the palm trees and nice warm sun.
Yeah, so is it? I thought Florida's were the retirement village of the US. Isn't that the case?
Yes, that's why Sean Tabor lives there. There are definitely a lot of retirees, and we also have a very influx of snowbirds, which are the retirees that live down here in the winter, but that have a second house up north and live there in the summer because it's not as hot. So around this time every year, we get the influx of snowbirds. The traffic gets a little bit more congested. The people drive a little more crazy. There's a lot of crazy in Florida, unfortunately, but it gets a little more crazy around this time. Between now and March, it gets a little weirder.
And so, food, wine. I understand you're into wine. You're a bit of a wine aficionado. Is that right?
Well, in my own right of mind, yes. It's one of those things where, to me, some people love their beer, and not saying I don't love beer, but for me, it's having a nice glass of wine with a nice meal, or even just sitting down. My wife and I will watch a show at night, and we'll have a glass or two of wine, and just kind of relax and enjoy ourselves. So I've taken a couple different wine classes and done some wine tastings and learned different ways to sip your wine where it tastes a little bit different than if you normally would. So sometimes you let it sit on your tongue, or you breathe in while you're taking a sip. It changes the taste. So it was pretty interesting. And the biggest thing that I've learned is, you don't have to be an expert to like a bottle of wine. So if the bottle of wine is $6 and someone else thinks it's garbage, but you like it, then that's all that really matters. Unless you're serving it to those other people, then that's a problem. But so everyone is their own sort of expert, I guess, if you will. If you like it and you enjoy it, then you buy it and you consume it for yourselves. So we do a wine club. There's restaurants down here that have like a wine club, and you can go and eat there, and you get a couple bottles of wine every month, and you can either drink them while you're eating your meal, or you can bring them home, and so it's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll tell you about my wine experience in Seattle last I was over there. We're at this Fancy Pants restaurant, and I was designated the wine chooser. And so I look at the wine list, and, the starting bottle on the list was $80, and it went north from there. So I chose an $80 bottle of wine because, coming from Europe, you can get good wines, as you say, at $6 and up type thing. And, $20 is going to be a great wine. And do you know what the server said?
I'm dying to know. Tell me.
They said, "Oh, you're in that range, are you?"
Oh, my God.
I was like,
wow.
How rude.
Yeah. Well, you do offer that bottle.
Yeah. You're in that range. Couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So you talked about enjoying a meal and a bottle of wine with your wife. You got children as well?
We do. I have a almost 19-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. So there's a little gap in age, which is great, but they still fight like they're 2 years apart. And oh yeah, and he's taller than her and bigger than her, so so when we have our wine, sometimes it's to also numb the pain of the two of them. How about yourself? Do you have any kids, Mark?
Yeah, I've got a 12-year-old boy. So his next year will be his first. We call it high school in New Zealand. I don't know, what do you call it when they go from 12 to 13 years of age? Levels.
We have it. It goes grade school to middle school, which is 6th grade through 8th grade, and then goes out high school in 9th. So next year, my son will be a freshman in high school, which is a little scary.
Yeah. Nuts. They grow up so quick.
Oh, yeah. And in 3 years, he can have his driver's license and drive, which is even scarier.
Yeah, nuts. Crazy. So you're one of the more recent MVPs. I see you've been in, a bit over a year?
Almost, no. Since July of this year, yeah. So God, like 4 months. Yeah.
Wow. Did it take you so long to get in because you're a former Microsoft employee?
No, it wasn't too bad. I think it was about like this time last year or so, where maybe even probably a little sooner, probably like in September of 2017, where I started working with Sean Tabor and Joel Lindstrom on various activities, blogging and doing the At Your Service podcast, and then got into actually presenting at things. In March I presented at Resco Next in Atlanta, and then started presenting more and more at different conferences, and just was actually shocked that one, I was nominated, and two, in my first nomination received MVP. So because I've heard, obviously every situation is different, and it depends on, the quality of the contributions and how often you're contributing and things like that. But I really wasn't expecting it. And it's funny because even Sean and Joel were saying to me, well, hey, you were nominated, but, don't get your hopes up. It's, it's very hard. And you may not get in your first time. And I said, oh, that's fine. I'm not doing it to become an MVP. I'm doing it because I enjoy sharing my experiences, sharing my ideas and expertise to hopefully help others. And that was, for me, was the intent. Becoming an MVP is like icing on the cake, because it's like, hey, Microsoft recognizes you and your contributions. And that's, to me, for what we do within the Dynamics community, that's huge.
Oh, it's so good. So good. It's good to have you in the program. And what projects have you been working on lately?
I've actually been on, from a customer perspective, I've been on one particular project now for about a year and a half. I mean, it's a very massive Dynamics CE project that's heavily focused on sales. Service, customer service, project service, and field service. So it's got the three kind of service pillars in there. And I've been doing a lot within the PSA and field service area for this project, which has been great. And, doing some resource schedule optimization. We're looking at ideas for connected field service and IoT. So it really is a fantastic project, because it seems to hit all the different, pillars, so to speak. And now we're incorporating into the project Power Apps and Flow. So we're really trying to make use of the entire Power Platform, which is, I think it opens up, from our perspectives, right, is that capability that maybe wasn't possible a couple years ago, right? Like the thought of building an app on top of, utilizing Dynamics data and actually being able to use it from a mobile device. And I mean, it's fantastic.
Mm-mm. So you're talking about Canvas apps here when you say Power Apps, right?
Yeah, Canvas apps. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Just that, that naming journal is, it's all Power Apps at the end of the day nowadays, right? So tell me a bit more about IoT and what type of use cases are you using, not just necessarily on this project right now, but what are you seeing common use cases with IoT and the whole connected field service?
IoT has really been picking up, at least if it's not just within the Dynamics community, but within different industries. And I actually presented at D365 Friday in Seattle, a couple weeks ago, on this whole concept of asset segmentation, and the use of the customer asset data from a marketing perspective. And it had to deal with IoT and connected field service, and utilizing that data not just from a hey, Mr. Customer, your widget is, based on history, your widget's going to be due for repair, but more from a, hey, Mr. Customer, your device has been in the shop like 5-6 times. We've sent the guy out. If we look at the history of everything from the IoT, and it's running hot and it's doing this, maybe, we should talk about replacing or warranty. So kind of using marketing campaigns based on certain conditions and criteria to target customers that, maybe fit into certain categories, and target them for things like replacements and offer specials or an extended warranty or things like that. So that's, really drummed up a lot of interest. I think, in general, the IoT and connected field service, there's been, I think, a little bit of, in the past, at least from what I could tell, the perception was, hey, if I'm not super technical, I don't know how much I want to get into it because it's got the whole Azure piece, right? And I'm not super technical. And if I set it up wrong, we're going to get hit with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of charges, right? Especially if you set up, and I can say this because I set it up and I set up Azure Stream Analytics and I let it run. And, we get our little Azure credit every month as an MVP. And within like a week and a half, I had hit my credit and that was it. And I said, well, I probably should throttle back how often, the Azure Stream Analytics is running because I don't need it to run that often. So those kinds of things, I think, were some of the reasons why, either people in our field or customers might shy away from it. But now that they have, the Azure IoT Central, which is more of a, like pre-built kind of, versus the Azure Hub, right, where you had to set up everything. You had to set up their resource groups and all this other stuff. Well, now this is more like you answer some questions, you can kind of get it all set up and it's spun up for you. Obviously there might be, I haven't played around with it yet per se, and I've seen some decks on it. It's obviously probably not as robust as if you were to go build it yourself and put in all the different functions and features. But for some organizations, especially smaller, mid-size, or even folks like us that just want to demonstrate the capabilities, it's fantastic. Because I don't have to spend time spinning up all those other pieces.
And don't you see that, like, Microsoft's doing that with more and more of Azure, as in, if you like, it's coming pre-configured rather than you having to build everything. Even the AI stuff we're seeing now in Dynamics is like, you don't have to go and work out all the, if you like, the data science piece behind it. You just get that, and what service it consumes really transparent to the individuals using the technology.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw that right with AI for sales, now AI for services there, and I'm assuming at some point in time they'll have the same, capabilities with the other pillars like field service, and there might be some stuff there for anything else, project service or what have you. But it's just such a great concept and functions and features because, like you said, it takes the guesswork out. Right. Microsoft has all these brilliant people working there, all these data scientists, and they've done the studies over years and years and years so that they can put together these algorithms to, based on trends, based on feedback from experts in the industries and what have you, and provide us with a tool that will spit out what we're looking for or what we need. And the nice thing is that it's not like they sit there and say, okay, yep, we provided this and we're done. I mean, they get it out and then they keep building upon it. So they're never done, which is good for us, probably good for them. But, sometimes maybe they get a little tired, but I'm okay with that because I get to consume awesome technology. And that's just, I think, in the world of, if we look at just the pure CRM space, right, and you take out all of the other pieces, right? If you look at the Salesforce .coms of the world and the Oracle CRM, look at where Microsoft was even maybe 5 years ago in the dynamic space or in the CRM space to where they are now. It's massive. The investment that they've put into the platform and all of the tools that support that platform. I don't think I would have ever expected this. Of course, we all thought it would be nice, but I don't see any other provider being able to provide this robust capability, and most of it included within the platform. Depending on what type of license tier you purchase, but it's there, and it's not these astronomical fees or things that where you need to go outside of Microsoft. These are all Microsoft tools.
So true, so true, so true. You mentioned there in the projects that you're working on, PSA. So that's the project service automation, correct?
Yeah.
And it would have been 2 years since I've been on a project service automation type project. Is Microsoft still investing in this bit of tooling? Where is it going? What do you see the future of it is?
Yeah, those are great questions, because I think that they were all questions that many of us had, over the course of the last year or so. I would say up until, even version 2, right? So version 3, 3.x we'll just call it 3.x because I think they're up to 3.2 is out now. But if you look at the earlier versions, or even the existing ones that most folks that are using it are on now, it was relatively, I would say it was lacking some things, right? There's certain things that were very hard to understand, like how to properly calculate resource utilization. And some of that was the tool was not as flexible. Some of it was documentation. And I know Microsoft has made a huge investment in beefing up documentation around the entire platform, which is fantastic. They just put out David Clark and Kyle Young and his team. They just put out a whole new documents for field service and all the different pieces of field service. So that was fantastic. And I know they're doing the same thing with PSA. From my understanding, the product isn't going anywhere, which is great, because I do see a huge benefit to it, especially with the capability to open that up in either Project Web or MS Project if you have it on your desktop. And they've made tweaks, significant tweaks and improvements in the speed of the UI. I think one of the big features that customers always really liked was the fact that they can see the Gantt chart within Dynamics. But depending on how big your project plan was and how many parent-child indentations, so to speak, that you had, I mean, it could take a little while for that chart to render, and you're thinking, oh, is it going to render or is it going to just crap out on me? And so they're working on making that a much better experience. And then they've done things like determining based on the resources you have assigned and what they've been doing on that particular project if they're over or under allocated. And has different algorithms in there and how much time. And they're saying, okay, is this guy burning red or is he okay, or can we put him on some other stuff on the project? So those are all things that are great to know, because sometimes you can't tell that from someone just entering in stuff on a timesheet, because maybe they're getting ahead of the curve, so they're putting in 60 hours, and you might think, oh geez, this guy is he's got a ton of work to do. But maybe he's just getting ahead of schedule, or, maybe he's taking time off coming up. You just don't know that unless there's some algorithm in place or some details to say, okay, no, he's really fine. He's ahead. But so now they're building in functionality like that, that to me is really, really helpful. The one thing I'd really like to see, and I provided the idea of it, is, any good project has a RAID log, risks, actions, issues, and decisions. That concept's not there yet. I mean, I don't see any sort of entities that are pre-built to handle that, or even just like a baseline status report template that could be generated, a Word document. Those are some of the things that I'd really like to see pre-built into the application that could then be configured or tailored to specific project needs. Some of the other items I've brought up is, the whole concept, and I get this a lot from customers that are using both PSA and field service, is, well, when do you use a project versus when do you use a work order? Well, can't you have a project where you actually have to open up a work order because you have to roll a truck to do something? And and it's true. So, a lot of projects I've been on, we've linked the two together, but I've brought that up to Microsoft to say, hey, product management, and say, hey, it would be really great if you linked, projects and cases and work orders all together so that the three of them can talk, right? Because we're on projects, and let's say I log a case with Microsoft. Well, that's great. I document that, but how great would it be if I open up a case and I have a project in Microsoft Project? I can open my own case internally and reference a Microsoft ticket number or something like that.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. That sounds good. We've quickly run out of time, and there's more questions I'd actually like to ask on this. I mean, I know Neil Benson will be pretty happy to hear the Gantt chart is in there because it helps so much with Scrum projects.
Mr. Neil, it'll be there. Trust me. And if not, Sean Tabor will buy you a drink.
Tell me, let's just do a few quick fire questions as we wrap up. Kind of, what's your favorite app that you have on your mobile phone?
My favorite one is the app where I can shut my kids down on our Wi-Fi. So, yeah, it's fantastic. If I feel they're on it too long, I can pause I can pause specific devices, or I can just shut off their entire profile until another time. I can even program it, like during the week. I program my son so he gets kicked off everything at 10:30.
Wow. So what's the app called?
It is called I think it's called Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And it came with my router. I have this Netgear stealth router or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like a stealth fighter, but it's pretty cool.
Wow. Okay. Tell me, in closing, what do we got? We've got a few more minutes to go. What pitfalls would you have given your 20-year-old self advice on?
Oh boy, pitfalls. Let's see. That's a tough one. I would say probably from a work perspective is what I know now versus then is just kind of pace yourself. Don't take things personally. It's good to take pride in your work, but when someone doesn't like it, it's not necessarily reflective of you or that they don't like you. It's just they have a differing opinion, and you just have to roll with it and ask some questions to get down to the bottom to what they're looking for. I would say in life in general, just patience. I think with us having children, we'll try your patience, and it's good to breathe and pause. And I think that's good advice even when you're in a meeting and it's hostile. Breathe and pause and just listen. Do more listening. I tell my wife all the time now when she's mad at me, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And because I'm not going to argue. Yes, ma'am.
One last question before we wrap up. What people have been probably the most influential in your life?
That is a good one. I would say there's a couple people. I'd say from a personal perspective, I would say probably my father. Kind of taught me early on the value of working hard, and nothing comes easy in life, and that is something I preach every day to my kids. You don't have your hand out, because we don't give handouts in this house, and the world certainly doesn't give you a handout. You work hard to get where you are, and you're going to have to work hard until the day you die, unless you win the lottery. So I would say, probably, my father was a big one, and I would say another one was probably my high school baseball coach. Who was a really big jerk, to put it nicely. But I learned a lot from him in terms of things that, still working hard, and things won't always, even if you work hard, life's not always fair. So you have to, again, work hard. It's about teamwork. There's no individual awards are great, but, you're still part of a team. And, if the team succeeds, you succeed. If if the team fails, even though you had a great day, yeah, it may not sting as much, but we still failed. We didn't meet the objective.
Scott, it has been awesome, and time has flown. We're on our half hour. It's been great talking to you. If people want to connect with you online,
they can find me on LinkedIn at Scott LeFonte. All one word. I think it's linkedin.com/in/Scott LeFonte, and on Twitter at fieldservice_guru. Don't ask. I tried to find field service something or other, and I forgot, and everything was taken, and I came up with Field Service Guru.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Full show notes can be found at nz365guide.com/51. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.